Okay, so academic realities, or why the kind of research I'm talking about doesn't actually get much attention at present, or is starting to, but yeah, anyway. So academia ultimately is funded by corporations and military research, at least in a big way. The average university brings most of its funding in from research grants and from papers that their professors and their alumni and their postgrad students are doing. So that's an important thing to remember, that the academic industry, while a lot of the pursuit is purely for what the hell, or purely for interest. This is why tenured professors are so important, because if you have tenure, effectively you can work on what you think is important to some extent, and not worry about the demands of finances, which is, as I say, why tenure is such a sacred thing, which is going away now a lot, which is kind of sad. But anyway, it comes back to my main point, that academia and academic research is generally funded by what people can see money in, if that makes sense. This is also the reason why academia, well, one of the reasons why academia hates fluff, or at least hard academia hates fluff. It's why when you're asked to do your dissertation, or you're asked to do a master's or a PhD, or any serious bulk of research, you have to really come down to defining what your problem is, the scope of your problem, and what you're trying to solve, and how you're going to go about that, and what the testable conditions are, and things like this. Because at the end of the day, especially for larger projects, you're going to have to go to some kind of funding committee or some kind of board. Someone at some point has to evaluate the worth of your work before you spend time on it, or any significant time and money is invested into the project. And the fluffier something is, the harder it is to solve. So anyway, what happened with AI is we had this boom. You had Turing coming along, and you had all these wonderful advancements that happened from the 50s through to the 80s. That was just like massive explosion. Stupid little things that you wouldn't think about. The ability to do calculations, basic calculations, weapon systems, military grade weapon systems. Oh my god, was there a lot of AI research there. All sorts of weather stuff. Robotics was doing great. Manufacturing was benefiting, and people had this vision. Everyone had this vision of going forward to this massive solution, and this ultimate understanding AI. And there was a lot of research into these big AIs, these huge AI projects that were about understanding everything. These expert systems that were perfect. There was also a lot of research at that time into semantics and into understanding of language, and the core concepts of interaction and social, and it's reflected in the pop culture of the time. There was a lot of interest in the field. You just look at films like Short Circuit and all those. There was a lot of stuff going on there. But then what happened is people started hitting brick walls. They started having projects which were extending, and overall funding dropped out. The bubble burst. The AI crash happened. Other people refer to it as the AI winter. It generally is considered to happen at the end of the 80s and the start of the 90s. AI research was all of a sudden no longer an interesting thing to do, or it wasn't seen as a good thing to do. And the reaction of this is basically this huge field of AI that had expanded from this very small thing into this very large thing over a few years. popped. But the small individual components of research still stayed around and started doing really well. Things that could immediately show results got a lot of attention, and so there was a lot of work into very small problems that made a lot of sense. And so you get to the situation now where if you talk as AI as a subject in academia, you never talk about this massive holistic AI concept. You're talking about individual small groups of research, and these small groups are fascinating and really interesting. Things like OCR is a whole field to itself, recognizing people's recognizing inputs. It's a part of a bigger field called computer vision. Computers being able to look at something and understand what they're seeing. And you're getting things like the Kinect coming out, which is just like, oh my god, this blows your mind, and that we can even do this. This is just like so fascinating. Mocap without all this tracking. It's like, oh my god. And some very interesting stuff being done with cell phone cameras, for instance. All sorts of wonderful things being done in computer vision. Likewise, in medicine, there's been massive advancements since we got the Human Genome Project done. The AI community has gone nuts on that data, absolutely nuts. And we're getting faster and faster at sequencing genes and getting that information. Because we have information, well, information is data, is the heart and core of most AI fields. If you don't have data, you don't have nothing, Google is like the people for data. I mean, most of the stuff Google does is based on predicting intent, because they want to know what ads to serve you, and they want to know that when you type 3 letters, they can kind of predict what you're going to search for, and they want to know what you wanted to search for, not what you said you wanted to search for, because computers generally only do what you tell them to, not what you want them to. And Google's business model so much is about predicting that. That's why the automated car project, for instance, is so totally in their field, because they're all about getting computers to understand intent and predicting human nature. And then they can monetize that through ad sales and ad revenue and improving their services there. Likewise, things like if you go to Asda, for instance, on your online shop, you'll get a chatbot that guides you through, and advanced recommendation engines like on Amazon, which are trying to just suggest an item there very carefully, and through this improve your recommendation and then improve their revenue. So academia is thoroughly driven, as I say, to come back to my original point, by the funding available. Things like Google Summer Code does loads of stuff, but a lot of military research projects. Things like, I think it was Netflix put up like 3 million for the best DVD recommendation algorithm. Stuff like that is totally crucial. AI projects like predicting traffic. Traffic's a huge one. Predicting traffic, or something as minute as a piece of medical instrumentation, when it opens its valve, when it closes its valve, when does it release medication, when does it not release medication. All these kind of things exploded. So to come back to my original point, AI as a field in academia only exists in the loosest sense these days, because, as I say, it has broken up into its smaller subcomponents, mostly because those subcomponents just grew too big, but also because this holistic view of creating the artificial intelligence, that concept was just so big and so weighty, it kind of crushed people. And it's important to realize that, especially when I start talking about my project, because when I first sit down with people who are into AI and people who know the field, and I start talking about what I'm doing, they think I'm an idiot, quite frankly. And I am a bit naive at times, but it's because they've seen, a lot of the older ones especially, have seen where this leads. And what I say to them And the big difference between what led to that harsh bubble burst and that re-examination of the field of artificial intelligence was the world they're working in is not the world I'm working in. Trying to create AI that understands everything in the universe means understanding everything in the universe. Well, guess what? If it's a game and you're building an AI for a game, you already understand everything in the universe, because if your game doesn't have blue flowers don't exist. And that sounds simple, but it's actually fairly fundamental. So that is the reality of the of academia. That's why your proposals have to be really clear, concise, and why there has to be, someone has to see a future in it. And so, the next time someone pesters you for, nailing it down and defining the scope and blah, blah, that's what they're doing, because at the end of the day, it's all about money. So I hope my rambling explanation of academia and where it stands kind of, as I said, very, very loose overview, and where AI stands and why AI is the way it is, and why you're not seeing these massive projects, and why you're seeing instead these very focused projects like getting emotion into a face and text-to-speech and all these things. Why are you seeing those, but you're not seeing these massive, let's create the next animatronic creature? Those are projects that are going to be built on these smaller projects. And likewise, my project hopefully is another small piece in the puzzle. So thank you, and I direct you to the other two videos about the history of dialogue trees and the state of the industry and why things happen the way they do. Cheers.